Hi there, thank you so much for clicking on this video. Welcome back to Ms. Johnson's ELA mini lesson. This is mini lesson number 9. We're going to continue on with our story, Water Sky, and talking about this word summary. So first what we're going to do is quickly go over what a summary is. Let's get started. Alright, so remember what a summary does is it retells the main events in a story in a shorter version. So it's not retelling every single thing that happens. It's focusing on the main events in the story and putting it into a quick couple of sentences. So when we think of a summary, we think of these 5 things. Somebody, wanted, but, then, so. Somebody is who is the story about? Where does it take place? Wanted, the main character of the story usually wants something or wants to complete a task. But is usually the problem in the story. What problem does the character encounter? Then is how the character solves that problem. And then so is kind of the ending. How does the story end? So before we even get started with anything, summaries, new readings and stuff, what I want you to do is turn to page 12 in your magazine. And I want you to reread the story up until paragraph 16. So you need to go back and reread it. Rereading helps us refresh our memory, gets us focused, and kind of gets us back in the story when we go and read on for another part of the story. So go read it to yourself right now. Okay, so like I said before, going back and rereading the first part of the story focuses our attention and we can get started with our summary. So we know that the main character, his name is Lincoln. He is from Boston and is going to Alaska to visit this Vincent Olgan guy. But Vincent was not there to pick him up. We met this new boy named Cusick, and he says that Vincent is not well. So that's kind of the general first thing that happened in the story. Go ahead and turn to your close reading packet, and actually we're going to go to Wednesday's page. This is Wednesday's page, and we're going to answer this question on the bottom together because it's going to focus our attention first, and it's good to go over some answers. So it says, choose 3 key details. 3 key details, so these are the 3 main events, to create a summary of the story so far. Put the events in time order by writing a number from 1 first to 3 last on the line next to the event. Okay, so what I had told people before was what you want to do is cross off ones that don't belong in the summary. So what we're going to do with A through E is we're going to read and pick 3 ones that are really, really important. Okay, A says, Lincoln wore a bright blue ski jacket and boots. So you have to ask yourself, is that important for a summary? Is that answering somebody wanted but so then? No, it's not. It's a really small detail that does not belong in a summary. So for A, I just want you to cross off the line for A. B says, a boy met Lincoln at the airport instead of Vincent Olgak. Does that belong in a summary? Yes, that's what happens in the story. So put a star next to B. That's one of our key details or key events. C says, he knew to look for a man with blue-rimmed glasses. Kind of like that first one, that one's not very important to our summary. He knows he needs to look for somebody, but it's too specific. Cross off C. Okay, hopefully the last 2 are correct. So D says Lincoln traveled from Boston to Alaska and was greeted by the cold. That's how the story starts. He's going from Boston to Alaska. Put a star next to D. And then E says Lincoln had heard so much about Vincent Olgak, so he was nervous when Vincent was not there to pick him up. That's what happens in the story. So, out of those 5 events, we found 3 of them. We have B, D, and E. Now what we have to do is put them in order. What happens first? What happens second? What happens third? So the first thing that happens is Lincoln travels from Boston to Alaska. So next to D, put a number 1. After that, Vincent was not there to pick him up. So Lincoln heard so much about Vincent Olgak, but he was nervous when Vincent was not there to pick him up. Okay, number 2 goes on line E. And then the last one is going to be B, 3. A boy met Lincoln at the airport instead of Vincent Olgak. So there it is. So this is what your page should look like. Now that we kind of understand how these work, let's go ahead and continue on with the rest of our story. So what we've done right now is we've answered a question, we've corrected our work, we've reread the story. We have a pretty good idea of what happens in the beginning of the story, and it's actually a chapter. So now what we're going to do is we're going to read the rest of the chapter. I'm going to read it out loud, and I'm not going to give you any input. I want you to figure out what you think key events and details are that belong in a summary. Okay, so I will read it out loud to you. You're going to underline, circle, highlight, do what you need to do to kind of help you with your reading, and then we'll fill out our graphic organizer, okay? Here we go. Okay, so in your magazine, go ahead and turn to page 16, and we're going to start on paragraph 17. It's the very last one on the bottom. Again, I'm going to read it out loud to you. You are in charge of underlining and circling and annotating, okay? Lincoln snapped back to the present, looked at Cusick, and swallowed hard. Page 17. I am sorry Vincent Olgak's sick, Lincoln managed to say, then quickly blurted, I'll just go to the hotel. Dad says there's one here. I'll call him. Oh, you don't have to do that. I will take you to Vincent Olgak, all right? He sent me to get you. Lincoln managed to work his mouth into a smile. The wind struck the terminal with a mournful wolf howl. The building shuddered. He reached for his return ticket just as the baggage came through a large door in the metal-walled building. Together with a blast of cold air, resolutely, he picked up his duffel bag and suitcase. Okay, he said, please take me to Vincent Olgak. You cannot go as you are, Cusick said. You need Eskimo clothes. He is on the ice. I'll be all right, the boy said. I've skied at 0 in these clothes. Cusick smiled at him politely. I will take you home first. You can leave your bags there. Lincoln nodded. With his duffel in one hand, his suitcase in the other, he followed Cusick out of the terminal. All right, I'm on page 18. At the top of the steps, he looked out on the village of Barrow. It was not easy to see, for it was white on the white landscape. Everything was covered with hoarse frost. Utility poles and wires, buildings and their doorways, and parked snowmobiles. The air glittered and flashed with what seemed to be smithereens of mica, but which was sub-zero mist. The cold was working its white magic to hide the little town at the top of the world. Hey, it's beautiful, Lincoln exclaimed. Then he saw 2 four-wheel drive vehicles that had been left running so they could not freeze up while the drivers waited for their passengers. He also noticed that only one person walked the cold, white streets. And then he saw why. The large thermometer on the side of the terminal registered 35 below 0. Lincoln's breath crystallized on his eyelashes, and he almost did not see Cusick go around the mountain of plowed snow. He ran down the steps and found him beside an orange snow machine. The sight of the big ski-doo not only cheered Lincoln, but banished the thoughts about staying in Barrow. From the looks of things, he would be driving snow machines to get around, and that was just great. His dad was right. This is going to be a wonderful adventure. Hop on, Cusick said. I'll give you a tour, show you what finding oil on our ancestral land has done for the Eskimos. Lincoln swung around the seat behind Cusick and balanced himself by holding a piece of luggage in each hand. The machine shot forward, and he grabbed with his knees to keep from shooting backward into the snow. Cusick steered the machine around the snow pile and sped down the main street. The houses stood far back from the broad main drive. They were too small to conserve heat. Some were almost buried under drifts of snow. When the sun lit them, they twinkled. I'm not on my planet, Lincoln said to himself. Barrow is just different. As Dad says, it is otherworldly. Okay, so that is the ending to our reading. Go ahead and turn to Thursday's graphic organizer. It looks like this, and we will read the directions. It says, read the second part of Water Sky and annotate key events. List the key events, then write a brief summary. Okay, so for the key events, I would like you to write down 5 key events that happened in the second part of the reading. Go do that now. Okay, so now what you need to do is write a quick summary of what happens in the second part of Water Sky. So remember, it starts with Lincoln finding out that Vincent is sick. Use your key events that you've read about and write a summary, just a quick 2 sentences about what happened in the second part of the story. Go ahead and do that now. And after you've written the key events and the summary, we're going to answer the question on the bottom. The question on the bottom says, which details from the story best describes Lincoln's experience with weather in Alaska? Choose all that apply. So if I were reading this, and what I've done now is I've underlined Lincoln's experience with the weather in Alaska. That's the focus of our question. Choose all that apply. So it might be all 4 of them, might be 3, 2, or 1. You need to decide. Go ahead and answer the question on the bottom, and how I want you to answer it on your homework log is type out the sentences that you chose. So go ahead and do that now.